And as I did the inner work with that, I realized this was showing up as a mirror, not that I was betraying others, but that I was betraying myself. And so it made me acutely aware of all the ways that I was in self-betrayal because I was serving others and overgiving and doing too much and just not caring for myself.
Generally, the darker it is, the brighter your light's gonna shine. The contrast is necessary for you to step into that awareness so you can step through it. And that's how you help others.
And as a spiritual entrepreneur, I would say that other than motherhood or fatherhood, parenthood, it is probably one of the deepest spiritual journeys that you can go through because it challenges every core human wound, like the wounds that every human seems to have around things like belonging or things like rejection or things like self-worth.
Hi, and welcome to episode 19, Harnessing the Power of Community for Spiritual Growth. And I couldn't think of having a better guest than my good friend, and I always call her my second daughter, Christene Sismondo. So yeah, we connected in our days at Eden Energy Medicine, and we just resonated with each other, became friends, and Christine's an amazing healer. And it's been that's got to be almost 10 years that we've known each other. And she's really grown over time. And I'm really interested to dive in to this. I don't want to say it's a new world because she's been doing this world for a while, but kind of for me, outside she's an amazing healer and intuitive and all those things, this world of supporting women through her Spiritual Women's Academy, right? It's hopefully I got it right, spiritualwomensacademy.com. She'll get to talk about that a little bit. And so everybody knows, as always, in the details, I always have everybody's links, names, bios, so you don't have to go write it down or scramble. You can just go right below the video on YouTube or go below in the details section on Spotify, Podbean, wherever you're at, and click on it. Well, if what Christene talks about here today definitely resonates with you, that's why we're here, right? We want to open the doorways, as I always say, open the doorways to God, open the doorways to miracles, and open the doorways for you on your pathways. But I will say I always connect with people that have genuine hearts and are full of integrity. And I know lately Christine's really focused her energy on opening women's passion, their spiritual connection, to their divine purpose. And she's put her focus there and her heart there. And I can only expect that miracles are happening in that arena. So I'm excited to talk a bit about it. And this is actually an area that's really important to me. I think the world needs more of community. I always say the world needs more intimacy. It needs more real connection. So anyway, Christene, you want to say hi to the audience today?
Thank you for having me, Jeffrey. Yes. Hello. I'm so happy to be here and just excited about whatever it is that is going to come through today. I just have the sense that whatever is meant to come through for whoever is here to witness, to listen, to feel, that there will just be a deep resonance. So I'm excited to see what unfolds.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. Me too. I just was, first off, I just want to talk about a bit like this drive to help communities of women find their passions and purpose. Where did it begin? When did you see the need, I guess? And Dana dove into that.
It's kind of funny. I don't know that there's any one specific moment, Jeffrey. When I think back on my life, I feel like it's just been something that I've naturally gravitated toward, even as a 6-year-old. I remember I was doing some spins and tricks on the bars on the playground, and there was this little kindergartner, and I was in first grade, and she came up to me and asked me if I would teach her how to do that. And I had no training in how to teach anyone how to do anything, but there was just something on my heart that screamed yes. So I remember going home that day feeling so excited about this agreement that we had made to work together, and thinking through step by step by step by step by step all the little things that what I would need to do in order to help her go from never having sat on a bar to doing a 360-degree rotation around the bar. And the very first thing that I realized was that she would need to get over that flip-flop that happens in your stomach as you go around. There's this drop that happens and it feels uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And she would have to get over any fear that she may have had around dropping herself or fear around not being able to hold herself. And so that's where we started. And I feel like that's where my passion to help serve and support and mentor other people started, was literally on the playground when I was 6 years old.
Well, the little young, wise woman. Wow. And then, you just sense out of that the teacher in you, right? The nurture in you, the thinking through, because, being married to a teacher, my wife, Jules, I know how their mind works methodically, step by step by step. And I know when we first met, you were there supporting others with their businesses and helping them be successful. And then you took the brave jump to step out on your own. So
Okay.
talk about that a little bit. Talk about that journey and ultimately culminating in building these communities.
Yeah. So after that experience of being 6 years old and teaching somebody how to go 360 degrees around the bars, I just remember feeling this really big, expansive feeling outside of my chest. I felt so excited the moment that she went 360 degrees around the bar, and I felt this sense of pride, like I'm so proud of her,
Mm.
and also just so honored that I got to be a part of her journey. Like there was just like, oh, I'm so grateful that I got to be a part of that. And to witness the success, to witness the journey, really, again, like I said, journey, it's going from starting at zero to going 360 degrees, and witnessing the evolution of that
Yeah.
just like filled my soul. And so I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I ended up going to college thinking I wanted to be a teacher. I went all the way through high school, all the way through junior college. And it wasn't until my first year in the university that I went, oh, I don't think I want to teach. And so then I ended up pivoting to business, and I spent the next 17 years in the business worlds,
Mhm.
like learning and supporting with marketing and operations and all of these businessy things. And it was while I was in corporate, working my way up the corporate ladder, that I discovered energy healing.
Mhm.
And energy healing was really my opening into spirituality. And then I decided to take that big leap from my, well-paying corporate salaried position to start my own business. And when I did that, I had no idea that 6 months later, the world would shut down and I wouldn't be able to do my hands-on
Yeah.
healing.
The COVID, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really pulled the rug out from under me at that point. And I mean, I could go into all the many things that happened during that time, but I'm not feeling necessarily called to do that. I feel like that's a story for another day. But what did happen was I felt like I was being questioned around whether or not that leap was actually my calling, like whether I was actually called to do the healing work. Like, did I make the wrong decision? I just felt like the universe was questioning, and I was questioning the universe. Like I trusted
Mhm.
and I had followed my guidance and all of that. And then my whole world just turned upside down during COVID. Just
Yeah.
everything got stripped away. And that's when I went through my dark night of the soul. I heard your earlier podcast about your dark night of the
Yeah.
soul journey. And I went through my dark night of the soul, and it was not just a night. I feel like that is quite the misnomer.
See, the season, yours is the
It,
dark season of this.
yeah, it was honestly, Jeffrey, it was about 5 years. It took
Mhm.
me about 5 years to get really fully out the other side of that. And when I was coming out of the other side of that, that's when I knew that my calling at that time was really to help other people step into their calling, into their knowingness, and to tap into the spiritual guidance and their inner guidance to take the steps forward on their spiritual journey into entrepreneurship. And so that's really where that all started. Although, like I mentioned before, it started when I was 6 and it happened again and again. Like I noticed myself having this draw, this attraction toward people who were pivoting, people who were going through some transition and changing their careers or going from student to into a career path or from high school into college or, there's always been this transition point. And so supporting people into taking that step into where their soul is calling them to, that's what led me forward into the work that I was doing in the Spiritual Women's Academy and the business coaching side of things, and not just the healing, but then integrating healing into helping people step into their calling. And it was through that journey that I started my first group program called the Womb Collaborative, and Womb stands for Women of Mission-Driven Businesses. And so I brought together those women who were on a journey stepping into their spiritual path, doing their soul calling work in the world. And that's really where that community piece kind of culminated.
That's beautiful. Well, there's just a few things that hit me. First off, no wonder you and I are kindred spirits, because I always say I have two loves in life, and you don't always see it when you're in the midst of it, but one of them is I love helping people, and I love seeing them succeed. And the journey I'm on is, I made a lot of people a lot of money, and now it's serving me now. That's the big thing. And I think many of us go through that journey. The second thing with you I was thinking about is, because you talked about the dark season of the soul. And I actually talk about this in my book, which, by the way, it goes to the editor next week. I'm so excited. It feels so good. The Power Prayer folks, I'll be sharing that with you as we go along. But I have a chapter on navigating the dark night of the soul. And one of the big things most folks don't realize, and I know you're seeing that now as you're coming out of the tunnel to the little light that was there maybe in the beginning, is for your soul, for spirit, for the divine and your divine design and your divine purpose, that's necessary. And generally, the darker it is, the brighter your light's going to shine. The contrast is necessary for you to step into that awareness so you can step through it. And that's how you help others. So not saying one's better than the other, but generally it means you have a wider spectrum of energy in your mission that you're trying to serve. So you have to walk those shoes that other people have walked. So that's a reflection to you.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I feel like the deeper that experience is, that the deeper work that you're being called into, and that whole process is quite a shedding. I mean, there's a real stripping away, and for me, it happened at the same time that there was a fire in my hometown where I had just moved away from during COVID. And I remember going back to visit that hometown and driving through where all the fire had impacted the city, or multiple cities. But and the thing that was really fascinating about that is there was all the ashes and debris, and some of it, like even toxic matter, right? That then had to be cleared away. But one of the things that remained all through the town were the statues that related to faith. Statues of Jesus, statues of Buddha, statues of Mother Mary, like all the statues that related to faith all still lived on through the fire. And there wasn't a lot of reclamation. There's not really a lot to reclaim. and there was a need to rebuild from the ground up, but that faith still remained.
Was the pillar. Yeah. So now so that I think that's a great segue into this community building. And I got a sense with you, and I know I have a sense with myself that, you purged, you cleared, you were stripped naked, you're bare. Now you got to make that choice moving forward. And generally, folks like you and I are called to build something anew. So so walk me through like the thoughts you were having when you're like, okay, I'm being called to build these communities. What do I want that to look like? How do I want that to be different than what I've seen or experienced in the past?
Yeah, I did a lot of soul searching as I was processing that, and a lot of getting clear on who it was that I wanted to invite into that sacred community. Because what I knew about the particular one that I very first started with is that it wasn't meant for everybody, and that there needed to be some sort of parity versus disparity with the people that I was initially calling in. And that's one of the things that creates that sense of safety and connection, is that there's a thread that runs through it. There is something, or more than one something, that each of those people has in common. And that's kind of the unifying force. But I think that I didn't really know what I was creating when I was creating it, if I'm being totally honest. I don't think I understood the depth of the container I would be holding for safety, for connection, for evolution. I mean, I knew that that was all going to be a part of it, but I don't think I realized quite how significant all of that was going to be for the people who showed up.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit. Like, that's very brave of you, by the way. I think that's something to reflect to the audience too, that when you step out in your past, sometimes you don't know how it's all gonna evolve.
Yeah.
But now you've been doing this. Reflect on that a little bit. Of like, what are like the aha moments where you're like, oh wow, that's what this is about. That's the
I'll tell you the first aha moment. So this particular container was related to business, right? I'm calling in spiritual women entrepreneurs. I'm calling in women of mission-driven businesses. The intention really was to support these women in creating their soul calling business, and to support each other as teammates, because that's one of the things in corporate. When you're in corporate, you have a team, you've got support, you've got people to bounce ideas off of. Everybody's working for a unified mission, right? Or a unified vision, or a unified
at least
purpose.
ideally. The company,
Ideally, it doesn't always
ideally.
go that way, but yeah, but that's the intention. And so when you step into entrepreneurship, especially solopreneurship, where you don't have other people, you're going it alone. You're doing it all by yourself. And that can be really deeply isolating. And as a spiritual entrepreneur, I would say that other than motherhood or fatherhood, parenthood, it is probably one of the deepest spiritual journeys that you can go through, because it challenges every like core human wound, like the wounds that every human seemed to have around things like belonging, or things like rejection, or things like self-worth, loving oneself and valuing oneself. And I mean, you have to promote, and there's all these aspects. And so it feels like one of the biggest personal development or spiritual journeys to me, other than maybe parenthood. So what I thought would happen as a result of this program was that we'd be building businesses together, and that would be the outcome, right? Which there was that. But when I did the testimonials after the first trial period, because when I opened this up initially, it was like an experiment. Let me just let me see how this goes. Let me see if I like it. Let me see if they like it. And then if we all love it, we'll continue. But if not, what it was just 4 months of a container I created.
Mhm.
But when I went to do the testimonials and I got feedback, nobody was like, oh, I got this great strategy and I learned this wonderful thing and I've, exponentially increased my dollars and I have so many more clients. And that, like, nobody shared some sort of tangible, strategic business win. Everybody said things like, this was a safe place that I could come to and be open and raw and vulnerable and express myself. This was the place that was the heartbeat that kept me going over the last 4 months. This was the place that I felt loved.
Mm.
And I just didn't realize that holding the container for that level of intimacy, as you said at the beginning of this, would be the thing that landed for them more deeply than anything else. And for many, it was like I've always kind of felt like I didn't belong. And even though we are all so different, and when we came together, I wasn't sure how it was going to be in support of all these strangers. Like, I didn't think I had what it took to support these people, but I didn't feel like I didn't belong. Like, no matter what our differences are, I felt like this was this was a place of belonging. And so I think that's huge in spiritual containers, in creating community, is that sense of belonging. Like, this is a place that I can be. This is a place that I can show up authentically as me. This is a place that I can be emotive if that's what happens, and it's everything is fully accepted here. I remember some of our sessions, our meetings, our gatherings where one person would come in in this state of being just so elated because they had just had some huge win, and somebody else would come in not there at all, in a
Mm.
really sad place, and for various different reasons, right? But whatever it was for them, they were coming in at a very sad place. And both were held at the same time in the same space. And it wasn't like one person held back their win or their success to drop down to the level of the person who was sad. It was all welcome, all together. So it just created such a sense of capacity for beingness and experiencing the human existence.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think just to reflect and honor you in that, I think a lot of that is because you had that energy, right? That's your energy, that's your imprint. But as teachers, you're reflecting right now that you probably learned more out of that experience, gained more out of that experience, and they would say that that's how you learn the best. You get out there and teach it, you experience it.
Yeah.
But I also want to say, when we talk about intimacy, and we can talk about that a little bit more, because that's what this is about, right? It's like you have a community that's going to help you spiritually grow, and everybody is like my buddy Jesus. He met everybody where they were at. His disciples were a mess, right? They didn't have all their stuff together, and they were all in different places, not just in life and their relationships, but he met them all where they were at, with true love and unconditional, and having them be seen. And I think I want you to talk about that a little bit, like a community that really allows you to spiritually grow where you're at and not judging. That I find the too many groups out there are performance based.
Right.
It's like, well, how do we cream out the 10 that can succeed
Yeah.
versus how do we elevate everybody to whatever level they're at, and that's perfectly fine. Anyway, throw it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, the containers that I create, I think I created the container, if I were being truthful. I think I created the container because that was the container I wanted to be in. I think that there are so many groups, communities, containers, whatever they are, where you can't show up in that level of authenticity. And I wanted to create that for myself as much as I wanted to create it for them. I don't remember what your initial question was that related to
It's
it.
more of a comment than a question, but
It had to do with intimacy.
yeah. So what I was trying to share with you is when you held this container, you learned through the process, right?
Right. Right.
And you're growing spiritually through that process. And how your community evolved into something different than what we traditionally see. It wasn't a performative community, right? It was not judging them where they're at. So,
Exactly. So that is one of the like core tenets. I should speak to that a little bit because one of the things that I did in this container was I had a constitution
hmm,
and they had to agree to that constitution in order to join. They had to read kind of the rules of the room. And this was all virtual, by the way. This wasn't even in person. This was people as far away. I live in Oregon. My furthest person, I think, was South Africa, but it
wow.
was all over the place, right? Um, but kind of setting the stage for what is expected in this container and what is allowed and what is not, right? And so I think that that's really important in any community. It's to have some sort of tenets or some sort of principles or constitution, whatever it is, where as you're entering into that, you're agreeing to step into that space. And one of the things in that was this is a space of non-judgment. Like this is a space where people are allowed to show up in full presence. And that's another thing. They must be present,
Mhm.
like not just in the room present, but emotionally engaged, witnessing present. Um, and that there wouldn't be any sort of coaching or reflection or advice or anything like that unless it was wanted, right? So this was actually just a space of um, sharing to be witnessed for the sake of sharing to be witnessed. And in the witnessing, people get to feel seen and heard and understood and embraced and accepted, again, in a way that feels like non-judgment. Because of that safety that was created, it also happened where it was appropriate, each person would show a mirror. Like not always guaranteed that you would get a mirror, but when spirit called to share a mirror, then somebody would hold up a mirror. And there was such beauty in that because, as I always like to say, you can't see your own eyes without a mirror. You know, some people say you can't see the picture when you're in the frame, right? Or you can't see the label when you're in the jar. But for me, it's you can't see your own eyes without a mirror. And so in this space, there is a mirroring that happens. And I don't mean modeling or like, you know, if you're doing this, I'm going to do this. I don't mean that, but holding up the mirror so that people can see themselves and hear themselves as they are being heard and seen by others, because sometimes you just can't see yourself clearly.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that related to something spiritual or something in their growth that they weren't witnessing. And I had it handed back to me. I I wasn't just the facilitator. I was involved in this very deeply also and would receive a mirror and still do. I still receive a mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just there is that level of beauty and that level of safety that because of that safety, there is an openness to receive that reflection without fear of judgment because that mirror is coming from a place of love. It's not coming from a place of judgment. It is coming from helping that person see themselves clearly or come back to themselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There's a couple things that were rolling in my mind. One, I'll share the last one that came into my mind first when you said that, which is um, one thing Jesus showed me when we talk about love and unconditional love and all those things. We in a human form we don't quite get it. Um, what Jesus showed me was unconditional love without boundaries.
Mm.
I mean, that's completely, fully accepting, seeing, listening, hearing, being present with anything that shows up. And you can say yuck or whatever, but there's no yuck. There's a just a complete presence, and that's what I call unconditional love.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. And so bringing, I would say you're bringing more of Jesus into that Christ energy into the community. The second
Absolutely.
thing you talk about mirrors, and I wanted to share this. I know Greg Braden talks about this. You could probably find his talk on the Essenes, which was like a Jewish sect of priest. I might not get everything completely accurate, but to paraphrase, he talks about the 7 layers of mirrors. And you have big mirrors in your life, and then they get smaller as you progress through your spiritual growth. Subtle things. And I always joke about this, like, why it is sometimes I get email and it pisses me off and I don't, that's a smaller mirror than maybe you seeing a homeless person on the street and makes you uncomfortable. Like you don't know how to react to that.
Yeah.
So we all have real mirrors in our life, but I love this idea. And maybe you can even dive into this a little bit more on more practical, because I don't know if everybody out there maybe gets the concept of mirror, but really dives into deep enough. When we're talking spiritual growth, the way I look at it, and I want to get your perspective, is these mirrors, or when something's being reflected back to you, it's all about you and your judgment, reaction. And I always say fear, worry. I mean, you could feel it in your gut. You can feel it in your chest. You tense up because it's something you don't want to see in yourself. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
throw that over to you.
Totally. I wholeheartedly agree. And these mirrors, they show up in so many different areas of life, right? They often show up in the people that are closest to us, our children, our
Oh,
spouse, our partners, the people that we work with on a very regular basis, our bosses, things of that nature.
yeah.
And yeah, they do make us deeply uncomfortable. And I feel called to share one thing around this that was kind of more personal to me in a not too distant relationship. There was something showing up in this relationship where I was starting to feel betrayed. And it wasn't like adultery or anything like that, but it just felt like this strong sense of betrayal. And as I did the inner work with that, I realized this was showing up as a mirror, not that I was betraying others, but that I was betraying myself. And so it made me acutely aware of all the ways that I was in self-betrayal because I was serving others and overgiving and doing too much and just not caring for myself. And so these mirrors, they can show up. Oftentimes they are in how you're treating others or things that you don't want to see in yourself that are outward, but they can equally be mirrors to something inward. That is, if you're seeing somebody judge somebody, for example, and you're rubbed raw by the fact that they're judging somebody else, it could be because you too are judging other people and you have this sense of judgment that you're struggling with inside. But it also could be that you're judging yourself, right? And so it's really good to, anytime there is that friction or that tightening or that some sort of bodily sensation to something that is going on outward in your external environment, to take a look inward and see where either you're doing that same thing to other people or you're doing that thing to yourself.
Absolutely. I'll share my one little technique with you. And then I know, just to prep you before my folks leave my show, I always ask them for 3 things that they can give people to walk away with. It's like something very practical. So not to scare you and don't have your mind spinning around. I think spirit will guide you into thinking of three things. But what I always say, where I've gotten to in my life, is when something triggers me to any kind of judgment. I mean, any kind. I try to get as subtle as it is, or fear reaction, worry, anger, any of those things that I consider not of God, which is a lot. Um, I just express gratitude to God for showing me that.
Mm-hmm.
That's my first step. I call it my catch, because you got to be grateful that you caught it. Because how many times in life have we all spun out? Somebody cut you off in traffic and you just can't let it go, or whatever it is, right? And you spin out and you're just wrapped in that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, that jerk. Oh, how could they do that? They must be like the worst person walking the planet, and they're an idiot and da 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 da. You don't really know. And you're caught in that for hours, sometimes for some people, days.
Yeah.
So I got to this point where I just say, thank you, Lord, for showing me. Because once you catch it, you can go back and do the inner work and then choose differently. But I wanted to get your take on that. Like, what is your method for facing the mirror? Especially you did it in a group. So that's a lot of vulnerability there, my love.
Yeah. I think I have a variety of different methods. And um, one of them just has to do with getting in touch with where that's living in my body. Where is that emotion showing up inside of my physiology? Sometimes it's in the heart space. Sometimes it can be a pain in the neck, right? And sometimes it can be a punch in the gut. And so sometimes even knowing the physical location or describing what that feels like can give you some indication around what's going on, and just being present with it and not trying to push it away, I think is because that can also be a form of self-rejection or self-judgment, right? But just say, basically, like you said, thank you. Also, thank you to the body for being that kind of responsive, right? It's sending you a message. And so getting clear on what that message is. And sometimes I don't know what that message is. Sometimes it requires me to do some journaling about it. Sometimes it requires me to bring it to my community and say, this is what happened and I'm struggling with processing it, right? And so bringing it out into the open, it takes away its power, really. It
Yeah.
takes away the power of when you share it openly, and don't push it away. You're not shoving it under a rug or burying it. Just being with it, honoring it, thanking it, sharing it. Or the other thing I do, of course, is healing work, healing sessions,
Yeah.
but either with myself or with others, and that can help process
So
those.
I love the fact that you use some of the phrases, like your heart like a broken heart, or pain in the neck, or
Yeah.
you punch in the gut. So, and you and I, of course, lived in the energy world where we do that work, but maybe get a little more practical for folks. Like, hey, if you feel like your heart's broken, what kind of questions would you start asking yourself?
I don't know that I would be asking myself questions, but because of much of the work that I do is very body based and it's embodiment work, so I may just place my hands on my heart and I may just be with the sensation that I'm feeling in my body. Because for me, sometimes words ask too much,
Mm.
and sometimes what's actually being triggered in the body can even be pre-verbal. Like there can be something showing up and you can be triggered by something that you don't even know why you're being triggered. It's not a conscious thing. It can either be a subconscious thing or a pre-verbal thing before you even had the words to know how to process it, or even not pre-verbal, but within those first like 7 to 8 years of life, our brain development isn't what it is after that in order to be able to cognitively think through and have the words to explain things. And so certain things live in the body. And I think, honestly, Jeffrey, one of my superpowers is silence. One of my superpowers is not talking and just presence. And so being with that sensory feeling in the body and just being present with it and getting curious what message it might have for you, or, whether it's willing to shift, or whether it's connected to something that happened in the past. Or, if you've got heartache, things like scraping across the chest to create spaciousness in the body for that to move. So for me, I just do a lot of embodiment related work.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And really stepping away, sitting with your body and honoring it. Yeah. I guess I wanted to mention, I'll mention two things. One thing and get your reflection on this. So in the journey of entrepreneurship, which I'm going on now, it was easy to serve other people, right?
Yeah.
Because you can, the weight you carry in that, you go, oh, what's for them? It's okay, And, but when you start doing it for yourself, that's what you said. There's all kinds of, I don't want to say crap, but personal stuff that comes up. And mostly you cannot verbalize it. It comes up in your body, and it leads to distractions or fears of putting it out there for reasons you don't even know, and who knows what childhood trauma. So that's one thing I want you to think about, because I'm sure with your community, like you said, getting it out there is really helpful. Like, why is this happening to me in this moment? Because sometimes you just can't articulate it. So I wanted to share that. The thing that I do, the practical tip for folks, which again, I love practical tips. One of the first things I did was I think I've shared this before. There's a book by Michael Brown called The Presence Process. Mm-hmm. And basically you just sit down and do a meditation and breathing exercise. And it's, you breathe in, you say I, you breathe out, you say am, you breathe in, you say here, you breathe out, you say in, you breathe in, you say this, you breathe out, you say now. And what you're trying to do, it's kind of like maybe a walking meditation or driving. You're trying to give yourself a rhythm so all your thoughts can go by. But before you actually do that sitting reflection, you say, I feel this in my body here. Can you show me where the source of that pain is at? And you just let go of thoughts. And generally what'll happen is you might be 15, 30 minutes into that process, and it'll be like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So anyway, that's a practical tip for folks. But talk a bit about, you were talking about, hey, bringing it out to community and being vulnerable. In this case, and I don't know if you have any specific cases, but talk about you maybe in your community, you don't have to use any name, feeling it in your body and just not knowing how to articulate, but using that community for that spiritual growth. Do you have any examples for me? Put you on the spot.
So fortunately for me, the community of women that I've pulled together are all people who are spiritual, and each of them has a unique gift around healing. And some of them are channelers, some of them they read oracle cards, some of them are trained in a particular modality, some have created their own modality. And so I'm thinking about just myself and working with one of the people in my community. She's just done some of those things, like guided me to the spot in my body where something is living, and then describing that sensation. Like, does it feel like a ball? Is it a triangle? What's the texture of it? And so exploring the different sensory aspects of it. So visually, what does it look like? Does it have a color? And then kinesthetically, what does it feel like from the tactile perspective? Does it have any sound or vibration or movement? And so really getting curious about the different aspects of that thing. And usually you'll get some cues, and sometimes it's like a ball, sometimes it's like a fluffy cloud, sometimes it's black, sometimes it's purple, sometimes it's rigid, it doesn't want to move, sometimes you can squish it, sometimes it wants to be stuck inside your body, sometimes it's kind of halfway out and halfway in, and just like being with that thing often gets it to shift without having to have the words to talk about it. And as you described, sometimes a memory will pop up, or sometimes you'll just have a knowing about what it is, or sometimes there's a message for you in it And so there's just these different outcomes that can happen. And I call it adventures in wacky land because it just feels so strange to go on that journey and allow whatever shows up to show up. But just one experience of for myself working with one of my community members in that way, I was stuck in my business. It was right before I was starting this community, actually, the
Yeah.
first community. And I was supposed to go put it out there. And I had spent about 6 weeks trying to get myself to do all the things I needed to do to put it out there. And I could not, it just, it felt like there was this invisible wall in front of me. And I just kept hitting this wall. And although it was invisible, it was palpable. I could feel the resistance of this invisible wall. So then I did this process with her, and a memory popped up that was from when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a memory of um, being coerced, force is a little strong, but into a sexual experience that I didn't want to have. And I still to this day have no idea what the relationship is between that experience that happened as a teenager and me putting myself out there for business. Like, I don't consciously know exactly what that correlation was. But after feeling into it and doing the work around bringing my current self, the self that knows I'm safe and has gone through so much life since then, and having a conversation with that past self that was in that memory, and me stepping into that memory as my current self and intervening and changing the course of history. After that, and there were lots of tears. It was ugly crying, by the way.
Yeah,
This was
yeah.
not a pretty experience.
Probably some good boogers in there too.
Oh, yeah. That, when you're just like,
It's like the
yeah,
good child cry, I call it. Yeah.
exactly. You're like just gooping everything out. It's gross. But after all of that, I got done in the next 5, 6, 7 days what I couldn't get myself to do in 6 weeks. It's like that wall was gone. And now I could flow forward just totally effortlessly. But there was this thing that was invisible holding me back. And so if I hadn't brought that up, right, I was like, I have this problem. I don't know what's going on. And I hadn't done that exploration with my body, then I wouldn't have been able to take the steps forward that led to me even starting this community in the first place.
That's
So
cool.
it's,
Boy, that's such
yeah.
a lesson for me too. I mean, I've been jumping through hurdles, but wow, that's just a great reflection because what you did was you stopped. It might have took you a while, but you stopped and honored that you faced it, and that's where your momentum came from.
Yeah.
It was not about working hard and pushing through.
No.
It was about acknowledging that and then stepping into that. That's beautiful. And unfortunately, the story of whatever you want to call it, sexual abuse or pressure, friction is way, way, way too common, especially
Yeah.
with women.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to hear that, but and so anyway, that's a beautiful story. I know we're getting close to as we call it, landing the plane here, and we're gonna drop on you some practical tips. There was one other thing I wanted to share too about with folks about what you said. Like the words aren't always that important to really feel through it. And some folks are more, as we called it, energy kinesthetic than others, right? Some people need to think through it. Some people just need to feel through it.
Yeah.
But there's also one other really important thing I've come to find that sometimes patterns, these little things we're stepping through, are not just things in our lifetime. You can't trace them back to this instance, this sexual instance you had as your brick wall. Like safety is what I would have told you, is like you didn't feel safe, and there was something where you put yourself out there and somebody violated your safety, and yeah, that's a protection mechanism. But sometimes a big part of our, especially for the folks that are in your community and that probably are listening to me, is you're actually spiritually growing and evolving to heal your genetic wounds, your past family wounds, things you don't even know why they're in your field. But guess what? When you came down to this earth, you chose to put them in your soul bucket, that you're going to clear that. You're going to step through that. And so don't be shocked if you feel something or you break a barrier where you're like, I have no freaking clue where that came from. And I really don't care, but I'm so glad I'm past it. And that, you can thank one of your ancestors for that. Cause I think they sucked that thing right into your DNA and you got to deal with it. So, the problem is you, my friend, because your soul basically said, I'm a badass. I can
I
knock all
can
this
feel
out really easily. And then they got to earth and go, man, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe it's not that easy.
yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to throw that out there. So here we go. We got two things. We're going to do the three, and then we'll give you a little opportunity to pitch the Spiritual Women's Academy.
Okay.
So I always love to give listeners three simple techniques they can take away. Maybe in this case, we can focus on what you learned in a community, because I imagine people listen to us like, I've been in communities and I've been violated, or I didn't feel like I fit in, or so. Okay, be brave. What three things would you give them to say, hey, there is a lot of benefit to being in community, and how do you find one that can uplift you and not tear you down?
Yeah. I think it's really important to kind of vet the community that you're stepping into. And like I said, for me, I have a constitution. So getting clear on if they have any sort of parameters or principles or anything that they are living by. I know that some people have had pretty undesired, suboptimal experiences in community environments. And I guess one of my suggestions would be, if you don't have a community and you haven't found one that fully resonates with you, consider creating your own. Consider what kind of community that would light you up to be in, and create a community that is in total alignment with your own personal values, and think about the thread that runs through it, the parity, the similarities that would bring people together into that community, because sometimes there just isn't one. I know a lot of people have struggled with finding tribe, and sometimes there's resistance to going out and finding a tribe because that can take a little while, right? Like finding the place you feel like you belong. But if you take the leadership and you take the step toward creating a community, whether it's a meetup group or a mastermind or whatever, a spiritual Bible study, like whatever it is, you get to be the one that invites people in. You get to be kind of that gatekeeper of, making sure that the people that enter that space are in alignment with the values you hold for it.
Okay, you got two. I got to hold you to one more. Can you come up with one more? That was a beautiful one, by the way. I think you really called a lot of people like, oh, maybe I'm meant to create my own community, right? My own constitution. So
yeah, I think it's valuable to do that. So around community.
Well, the thing maybe you most learned in this journey so far, is we're always learning.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I've learned so much in this. I think one of the things that has supported me in this spiritual growth journey and finding the right community is my own vulnerability, like my own willingness to be open and not have this wall up. And so I would just recommend doing whatever work needs to be done to open up your own
You don't
heart.
have to be a guru. I think you would be in a good way, the anti-guru. Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Hey, so I know I can dress up as a woman and join your community, but you'll probably figure it out and throw me out because I wouldn't be an attractive woman. But be clear. But anyway, just tell me a little bit about your world now. Do you have anything going on you want to invite folks to check you out?
I do. So this one isn't just for women. I'm actually opening this one up to men as well. And so it's for soulful entrepreneurs or healers or, anybody who is even stepping brand new into following their soul's calling. But I am creating a community love circle. So it's
Mhm.
just going to be this really warm, nurturing space for those brave souls who are willing to step into that vulnerable space, who are willing to put their judgment and leave it at the door and open themselves up to be both receive love and be part of that container of holding love and witnessing other people and in their journey of whatever it is that they're going through and just creating that sense of evolution and evolving for love.
Mhm. Now, is that ready for them to connect with you, or what's the best way for them to connect with you on that?
Yeah, so I would recommend going to spiritualwomensacademy.com/love circle, and that should get you there.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're opening up to men. It doesn't have to be so one slant. I know we're a mess. You women got it all together on the
Of
spiritual growth.
course.
Oh, my dear, thank you so much. You know, I was telling you we hadn't connected for a while, and I was just telling you the other day I was just so glad we get to connect. So it's been kind of beautiful ramping up for this, and I'm sure folks are going to gain a lot of this, and hopefully they get energized to get out there and connect and trust that hey, we're trying to build a world of beautiful intimacy. That's what I know Christine's doing here in this world. So amen to
Yeah,
you.
so if you don't have a community, come join mine.
There you go. Yeah, come check her out. You know, resonate. Check her constitution out. All right, I was always wrap us up with a prayer. Well, not always, but so Heavenly Father, open up our hearts, our minds, our ears, our beings, every cell in our body to all that is you, that is divine, that is in perfect alignment with Spirit. And what calls us, Lord, I know you call us to intimacy with you, and also intimacy with your children. I know all are your children, and you want to see them with your loving, non-judging, open and open heart, open with grace and forgiveness eyes. So, Lord, call us to do that. Call us when we're not in alignment with that so that we can continue to grow in your love. In your name, in your Son Jesus' name, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, my dear.